Chapter 19, Conventions. 58. Conventions of Delegates. As commonly understood in parliamentary law and as used in this book, the word convention refers to an assembly of delegates, other than a parliamentary constituted public lawmaking body, who are usually chosen specially for each session as representatives of the constituent units or subdivisions within a larger group of people to sit as a single deliberative body acting in the name of the entire group. The most common type of convention is that of an established state or national society, in which the delegates are selected by and from among the members in each local unit. Other terms by which such a convention may be described in some organizations include Congress, Conference, Convocation, General Assembly, House of Delegates, and House of Representatives. The term House of Delegates or House of Representatives is often applied particularly in the case of learned or professional associations to distinguish the voting body of delegates from large numbers of other members of the constituent units, who come to the convention to attend seminars, workshops, educational or social activities, or the like. In some societies also, House of Delegates or House of Representatives may describe a body of delegates who, instead of being elected only for a convention session, are elected for a fixed term during which they hold sessions from time to time as the bylaws may provide. Conventions vary in size, duration, and complexity of operation. A relatively small state society may hold a one-day convention consisting of 2 or 3 meetings at which all delegates are present. A week's convention of a national, scientific, or educational association, on the other hand, may be divided into a number of specialized sections, meeting separately at the same time, with only a few meetings when the entire body of delegates gathers in one hall. In addition, a convention is sometimes called for the purpose of forming an association or federation, or, like a mass meeting, 53, it may be convened to draw interested parties or representatives of interested organizations together in acting upon a particular problem. This chapter is limited to the features common to most conventions and relates principally to the convention of an established society. For variations of procedure applying to other types of conventions, see 60. Basic provisions and bylaws. In the case of an established state, regional, or national society composed of constituent units, the bylaws, see 2A through 13, 5630 through following, and especially 5638, or other governing instrument of the association or parent body, should authorize a periodic convention, define its powers and duties, fix its quorum, specify its voting members, prescribe the qualifications of its delegates and alternates, the basis of determining their number and the method of electing them, specify when, how, and to whom the call or notice of the convention is to be set, and make such provision as the particular convention may require for its organization and operation. Basic provision for the voting body of members may be worded in the bylaws as appropriate to the particular organization. For example, as follows. The voting members of the state convention shall be the state officers, including members of the executive board of the state association, the president, or in his absence, the vice president, of each club within the association, and the elected delegates of each club. In addition, the bylaws at the level on which the convention is held should prescribe 1. The conditions for a constituent unit to be in good standing for purposes of their representation, commonly including a minimum membership requirement, and 2. The number of delegates to which a unit shall be entitled depending on its size, usually by specifying, for example, that each unit shall be represented by its president, plus 1 additional delegate if the unit has more than a certain number of members, or 2 additional delegates if the unit has more than twice that number of members, and so on. The bylaws at the level at which the convention is held should also provide for the election of alternates as described in 5813 through 15. To avoid a change of officers during the convention, the bylaws should provide that only elected officers shall take up their duties at the close of the convention. See 5627. Convention members and alternates. Ways in which voting membership comes about. Voting membership in a convention of an established society generally comes about in one of the following ways. 1. Through being an accredited delegate elected by a constituent body, especially to act as its authorized representative or one of several representatives in a particular convention. 2. Through provision in the bylaws, as in many organizations, that the president or chief officer, or in his absence the vice president, of each constituent local unit shall be the delegate or one of the delegates. 3. Through being an incumbent elective officer of the organization on the level at which the convention is held, for example, an officer of a state society in a state convention, where the officers of the state society as listed in the bylaws are ex officio the officers of the convention as well as members of it, irrespective of the number of delegates that the local unit to which an officer belongs is entitled to elect. Or 4. Through being an accredited elected alternate and replacing at the time of the convention a delegate who is unable to attend or who withdraws from registered status. Filling of vacancies arising in a delegation. If the president of a constituent unit is unable to be present at the convention of an established society, his place there is taken by the vice president, or by the second, third, or ranking available vice president, if necessary and if there are such officers, just as for any other duty in which the vice president acts in the president's place. If the vice president is himself an elected delegate but takes the president's place, the vice president's original position as an elected delegate is filled by an elected alternate in the manner explained below, just as when any other elected delegate does not serve. Provision for alternates. To ensure as complete representation of the convention as possible, the bylaws at the convention level should provide that each unit shall elect a certain number of alternates, frequently equal to the number of delegates. To maintain a uniform standard of representation, the qualifications for election as an alternate, which may include membership in good standing for a prescribed number of years, are made the same as for a delegate. Alternates normally are elected with a designated order in which they will be called to serve, if available, as vacancies arise in the delegation of their constituent unit. When a unit has more than one delegate, an elected alternate, other than the vice president, is not associated with any particular delegate. The vacancy that occurs first in point of time, except when involving the president when the vice president is able to serve in his stead, is filled by the first selected alternate or the ranking one available, and so on. In cases where the individual delegates within a unit's delegation represent particular areas or groups, it may sometimes be desirable to make exception to the foregoing rule by providing in the bylaws at the convention level for the pairing of each alternate with a specific delegate. The disadvantage of such a system arises when both a particular delegate and his only alternate are unable to attend the convention, thus depriving a constituent unit of part of the representation to which it is entitled. Status and seating of alternates and replacement procedure. Alternates registered as such are usually provided with badges of a different color or shape from those of delegates and are seated in sections apart from them. In large conventions, assigned seats in the assembly hall ordinarily can be guaranteed only to the voting body. When an alternate is officially registered by the Credentials Committee, see 5914.5 and 5925, as taking the place of an elected delegate, however, he is supplied with a delegate's badge and becomes a voting delegate with the same duties and privileges as if originally so elected. If an alternate is to replace a delegate who is registered, proper evidence of that delegate's withdrawal from such status may be presented to the Credentials Committee, and the alternate must be registered as the new delegate before he consider vote as a member of the convention. It is the duty of any registered delegate who ends his presence at the convention to see that his departure is promptly reported to the Credentials Committee, and to whatever authority is concerned with locating the proper accredited alternate if one is available. Unless the rules of the body provide otherwise, no alternate or other person can substitute for a delegate who remains registered. In other words, a delegate's temporary absence from the convention hall does not entitle an alternate to make motions, speak in debate, or cast the delegate's vote, even with the delegate's authorization, unless a rule of the body permits this procedure. Duties of delegates. When a member of a constituent unit has accepted election as a delegate, he has the obligation to attend the convention, with such expense allowance as the unit may provide. He should not leave it to an alternate to serve in his place except for serious reason. At the convention, the delegate has the duty to be present at the business meetings and to be prepared on returning for the convention to present to his unit an information report of what transpired. A delegate is free to vote as he sees fit on questions at the convention, except as his constituent unit may have instructed him in regard to particular matters scheduled for consideration. Caucuses. Prior to or during a convention, members of a delegation may need or wish to meet as a group to decide how they will act with reference to certain matters to come before the convention. A meeting of this kind is usually called a caucus. Unless instructed otherwise by its parent society or unit, such a caucus is governed by the rules of procedure applicable to committees. 50. Since the delegation is in effect a committee to represent and act at the convention for the constituent society or unit that chose it. If the president of a constituent society, or in his absence the vice president, is automatically a delegate to a convention, he usually acts as chairman of his delegation. Otherwise, the delegation chairman is selected as outlined for the case of any other committee. 13, 17 through 18. Sometimes caucuses are held of different groupings of delegates, as, for example, all delegates from a certain district, territory, or other geographic area as defined by the organization, and they are similarly governed by the rules generally applicable to committees. As in the case of any committee, in the absence of a superior rule to the contrary, a constituent society or unit can instruct its delegation, although this is not always a good practice in ordinary societies. Such instructions are binding upon the delegation to the extent that the convention's presiding officer and other officials have a duty to enforce instructions of which they have been properly and officially notified. Such instructions, for example, frequently require a delegation to take a position for or against a measure expected to come before the convention or to vote for certain candidates. As stated above, the delegates are free to vote as they see fit, except where an instruction has been given, but a society can, by instructing its delegation, bind it to vote as a unit, that is, to cast all of its votes in accord with the decision of the majority of the delegation on all issues on a particular class of business or on certain matters to be acted on by the convention. The term caucus is also sometimes applied to a similar meaning of all the known or admitted partisans of a particular position on an important issue in a convention or any other deliberative assembly who meet to plan strategy toward a desired result within the assembly. Such a meeting may be held on the presumed informal understanding that those who attend will follow the decisions of the caucus.